Hi guys, welcome back to ADHD School, where being normal is just that little bit overrated. I wanted to bring you up to date with my ADHD assessment.
That's good.
Now, to be clear, this is ongoing. I haven't had it yet.
That's bad.
And for those of you who don't know, I've been thinking of going to have my assessment probably since last year, since I had a conversation with Eliza. If you're watching, Eliza, hello, who is both a med student and an ADHDer. And it just, look, it became clear from our conversation, which lasted 5 hours,
Can I go now?
that it might be a good idea for me to go and get assessed. Now, I originally was booked in to go see a psychiatrist. The reason I wanted to do that, here in Australia, you've basically got two options. One is psychiatrist, one is psychologist. Psychiatrists are trained medical doctors so they can prescribe medication. And I wanted medication to be an option if I indeed had ADHD. I didn't really see the point of going to see a psychologist for a diagnosis, and then if I did have it, going to see a psychiatrist as well, and then sort of having to double up on payments because it's not cheap, because a psychiatrist would have to do their own diagnosis. They're not going to just take the psychologist's diagnosis in good faith. What I thought was a little bit weird was when I did book in, so I got the referral from my GP, my general practitioner, which again, if you don't know, that's what you need here in Australia. You cannot just book in with a psychiatrist directly. You need to go through your family doctor. They will give you a referral and then you can book in to see the psychiatrist. What I thought was a little bit weird was that I didn't get any paperwork or any correspondence from them after I had booked in. And so with about a week to go, I was originally supposed to see them tomorrow. I've since cancelled that appointment and you'll see why in a moment. But with about a week to go, I emailed them saying, hey, firstly, how much is it going to cost? Because they hadn't told me that. Secondly, is there any paperwork you want me to fill out in terms of screening, pre-screening, questionnaires, those sorts of things? And they emailed back saying, no, just basically turn up and it's going to cost $600. Now, part of that is covered by healthcare, so that's another story. But I thought it was weird only because from my understanding of ADHD, to get an effective, accurate diagnosis, it's like peeling layers off an onion. So you need to understand what this person is struggling with and then try to get to the root cause of it. That's a process. It's usually not something you can just ask someone and in 5 minutes you can identify accurately that yes, they have ADHD or no, they don't. So in my head, I thought it was going to be much better if there was some sort of pre-screening questions or questionnaires to go through, if only for the fact that it would get the incoming patient, in this case myself, to actually think about some of the things that I might like to talk about when in fact I do go and see the psychiatrist, right? Because unless you're like me and you're doing all this research into ADHD in preparation for the assessment, you may not know exactly what questions you're going to be asked, and if you're asked on the spot, you might not give, let's say, the best or most accurate answer. I mentioned this to my GP with about a week to go, and she actually suggested that I go to another clinic, which is run by GPs, but GPs that have an interest or specialization in ADHD. So I phoned this other clinic, answered a few questions, and then they said, okay, we're going to send you some paperwork to fill in before you come to see us. So I thought, okay, that's great. Got off the phone with them. A couple of hours later, I had an email from them with a login to a secure portal, which had a link to 5 questionnaires and also some paperwork to fill out before I went to see them, like credit card details and things like that. Now, here's the questionnaires they sent me. So there were 5 in total. Number 1 was the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale, the ASRS version 1.1, which I'm fairly certain I've done before. That's in fact one of the things I filled out and went, oh, and it said, oh yeah, you should probably go and get assessed. Number 2, Autism Spectrum Quotient 10, AQ-10. Number 3, Depression, Anxiety and Stress Scale 21Q, DASS-21. Number 4, Mood Disorder Questionnaire, MDQ. And number 5, Personal Wellbeing Index, Adult 5, PWI-A. Now I'm going to go and fill out these questionnaires now. I'm going to take my laptop, go have a cup of coffee or something and fill them out. And I'll let you know how they went, what they were like, what sorts of questions were asked. And I'm doing this, I'm sharing this part of the journey because I know from firsthand experience that it can be quite daunting. And I'm not someone who's, let's say, easily daunted, but it can be quite daunting when you're booking in to get an assessment for something like ADHD and it doesn't seem very well documented, like what to expect. And it seems that, you know, in different countries, through different pathways, it can be a wildly varying experience. So I'm going to share my experience. So hopefully, if you're going down a similar pathway, at least here in Australia, you know, a little bit more about what to expect, maybe some of the questions you're going to get asked, and also maybe if you're like me and you've booked in somewhere and they've just said, yep, turn up at this time, and you're like, hang on, don't you want to know more about me before I come in? Maybe, just maybe you should go and try somewhere else where they do send you this type of questionnaire beforehand, because that just makes me feel like you're taking me that little bit more seriously. You're not just trying to take my money, if that makes sense. I'm not saying the psychiatrist is, but I just feel that way. I feel a bit uneasy. So I'm going to go fill them out now, and I'll come back and report, let you know how I found them.
2 hours later.
So I'm back. Those tests didn't take too long, which is good. They were a few minutes each and they're all multiple choice. Doesn't involve you having to write really long paragraph or essay answers, which for someone, let's say with a shortened attention span, that's a good thing. Now with each of these assessments, as soon as I'd finished answering them and hit next, it gave me a score. What I would have liked to have seen was a little bit more explanation as to, okay, you got this score, what does that mean? So, for example, with the ASRS, which is the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale, it does give you a score. So, for example, I scored quite highly in inattentiveness, but got a complete 0 on impulsivity. I would like to know, okay, what does that mean? So obviously, if I do go to see the healthcare professional, they'll be able to explain a little bit more, but that could be months down the track. And in the meantime, I don't think it does me a whole lot of good to be worrying about the score. What does it mean? And did I answer it correctly? I know there is no correct score when you fill out something like this, but you can't help but wonder. One of the big ones was the depression, anxiety, and stress scale. So when I answered that and got my score back, apparently I am extremely stressed. So like the highest bracket, there's no higher bracket than what I scored. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good if indeed I am extremely stressed, to not know what that means and to not know what to do about it, at least until I get to see you as a healthcare professional. So it would be good to know, if you are going to indeed give me the scores, what does it mean? What are the next steps? And maybe what are some of the things I can do to help mitigate the issues until such time as I get to see you? If I even get to see you, because I might not get to do that. The only one I had slight difficulty answering, I think, was the mood disorder questionnaire. It had a bit of a funny wording, like, have you ever had a moment when you're not yourself and then you did XYZ? So all the questions were prefaced with, have you ever had a moment when you weren't yourself? I found that quite confusing. So it asked me, for example, have you ever had a moment when your mind was basically racing and you couldn't control it? But then I had to think, well, was that when I wasn't myself? Because that actually sounds like me all the time. So that is myself. So is the answer yes or no? You know what I mean? So that one was a bit confusing. But again, look, the whole process took 10, 15 minutes. It was multiple choice. I didn't need to write any essay answers. I do like the fact that they sent me these questionnaires. There's my cat in the bed. Because it just makes me feel like they're taking me a little bit more seriously, and they're also making me feel like when I go in, I'm not going to have to tell, you know, that stereotype of lying back on a couch at therapy and then just talking about my life story for 5 hours. I don't want to do that. I'm very much wanting to go, okay, here's the problem. What can we do to solve it if indeed there is a problem? So if you've gone through an ADHD assessment yourself, I'd love to hear if you were sent any pre-screening paperwork. I'm early on in this journey myself, obviously having not been formally assessed myself, and the whole reason behind starting ADHD School, this channel in the first place, was number one, to document my journey in the hopes that it helps someone else, and number two, to educate myself, because there's so much information always coming out about ADHD and it can sometimes be hard to filter it out. It's also very easy to be overwhelmed by it because it seems like everyone else is telling you something else is a symptom of ADHD. Then there's this person over here saying that ADHD is just a farce and it's over medicated, etc., etc. There's a lot of noise out there, and I wanted to try and filter it down into something that was simpler. So that being said, we are starting our ADHD community, which you can join at adhdschool.com. Just put your email address in there. And obviously, I don't need to tell you, if you're watching this and you want to support what we're doing here, then subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can drop a like, and here's another video, if I'm doing this correctly and it's not backwards, that you might be interested in watching. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you next time.